have got Catherine Marshall in my virtual studio with me today. And what to say about this little pixie of a person who is producing the best Pinot Noir in the country. All the boys are going to shout and scream and come down on us like a ton of bricks. Kath, thanks so much for joining me on Carrie's Corner. Such a pleasure to see you.
Oh, Carrie, it's always a joy, my friend. I mean, we have come a long way together.
A very long way.
Awesome to see you flourish in your departments, and it's just been so lekker to work with you, and I'm just so honored, Carrie. So I first want to say that. Thank you very much.
How special of you.
Yeah. No,
well,
yeah.
I was trying to remember. I think it was 1993 or 4. When were we messing
94.
around with?
Yeah, 94. It was 94. Yeah, because I was in America in 93. So it was
London.
I worked at Vergelegen, yeah. So I think that's when we connected, yeah.
So you came back from America, I came back from the UK, and we both found ourselves at Anglo-American farms in that magnificent place that's called Vergelegen.
Were we, hey?
How blessed were we? And it was just sort of commonplace to be part of that honestly, it really, if I think back now, how absolutely beautiful it was.
Well, I have to give a shout out to somebody who was pretty special in our lives, Carrie, and that was.
I was just about to say, our Martin Meinert, he was Vergelegen, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he gave us the opportunity. He saw beyond us being women and all of that. Very cool to have had that opportunity to work in such an incredible cellar.
I think Marty loved us being women, don't you think?
I think so. I think I think yeah. For sure.
Well, from those sort of beginnings where we were trying desperately to sell a ghastly label that Norman Goodfellas, that Vergelegen came up with called Les Enfants, if you remember.
I do.
We were desperately trying to make money from, because we had the Anglo board breathing down our back saying, we bought this property, we need to make it work, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And we had Les Enfants, which was very good. It is a very, in Afrikaans they say, lekker idee, kak uitgevoer. If you understand what, it was hard to sell that thing, but anyway, we did. And Cass, before I go any further, just while we're on the subject of women and wine and all things that are related, I don't know if you heard that Margaret Leroy died last week.
Yeah, I did.
Margaret?
Yes. Yeah, no, it's happening so much now. We're losing a lot of giants in our industry, for sure.
So big shout out to Margaret Leroy, who was an unbelievable lady who shaped the future of many of us in the wine industry.
Sure.
So big shout out to Margaret. She worked with us as well. But Kath, I mean, we're detracting from what we're actually speaking to you about, because you've come a very long way, and under tricky circumstances a lot of the time. You have triumphed above all else, and in my estimation, you're producing some of the prettiest, most drinkable, most gorgeous Pinot Noir in the country.
Yes.
And the 18th, I think it was Wednesday, was Pinot Noir Day, World Pinot Noir Day. And I decided to defer it to today because I wanted all the Biz News listeners and everybody in the country to know that this weekend they need to buy a bottle of Pinot Noir. And we need to celebrate both Pinot Noir and women because it's Women's Month. When you left Vergelegen, what did you do?
Wow, Carrie, my journey is a long story. Lots of heartache, lots of very difficult times, particularly, when we were before 1994. The landscape of winemaking and for women in general in those times was very tough. And I only, as I reflect on my journey, I realize how tough it was. But when you're in it, you don't really kind of think about it. You just put your head down and you just go for it. So there was a lot of pioneering to be done. Yes, there were the greats just before me, like the phenomenal Norma Ratcliffe, who was just unbelievably.
Well, she still cracks a whip, doesn't she? She's amazing. All around like the head girl.
Yeah, and she was pushy, and she was, didn't stand for any nonsense. And I really, really, looked up to that because, I was such a rookie and so green and to have some mentor like that was just extraordinary. So I was the one after that. I came in after Norma set this trailblazers incredible path for us. But yet there was still a lot of work to be done, especially for people like me who came from a very blue collar background, didn't own farms, didn't own vineyards, but had a lot of passion and desire to be a winemaker. And even when I was looking to get into the profession, there was a lot of pushback from the older generation where I was working on wine farms as, PR and all of that to sell wine at these various wine farms. There was a lot of pushback. And I'm just unfortunately one of those contrarian kind of people that if you say don't do, then I'm going to do. So absolutely. I kept on pushing. And I honestly, when I applied to Elsenburg, I really didn't think I was going to get in. And I'd already finished a degree at University of Stellenbosch in sport and teaching. I was going to coach sport because that's one of my other passions. But then, of course, drinking too much Tassenberg at the famous Akker back in the day, I realized that this is really, really what I wanted to do was to make great wine, because I am an artist. I'm naturally an artist. I'm naturally bent in that direction. So I kind of saw wine as a culture, as an art culture that I could be a custodian of, but didn't realize at the time, taking this on, that there would be such a difficult road to traverse. But so being that, getting back to the story that I don't own a farm or I don't own vineyards, it was a case of going out to find people who had vineyards, who had cellars,
people who wanted this little pixie cuckoo that they could put into the nest. Yeah, you were.
Exactly.
Well, in fact, I always tease Neil Ellis because he was the first cuckoo wine farmer.
Definitely.
He didn't have a farm and he didn't have a cellar.
Exactly.
He didn't have anything.
Yes.
But I think it was a little bit easier because he was part of the boys' club.
Yeah.
But now we've got a boys and girls club, and I think the boys are actually going to come begging to be part of our girls club, don't you think?
Well, we've got such incredible women winemakers now that are really pushing things to really high levels,
So you
and
started a label called Barefoot.
Correct. Yes.
Which is very cat, because you are this little pixie hippie. She's a hippie pixie when you meet her, as you'll see. And you started Barefoot. What was the sort of thought process behind Barefoot? Because it was, I think there was some argy-bargy with an American trademark of sorts.
Yeah,
what happened there?
Yeah, look, there was no thought behind it. It was a case of coming back from overseas and seeing quite a few winemakers that had little bits of wine that was going on in their garage. And so, although it was being done in South Africa, it wasn't commercialized. So we had a beautiful little party down at where I live in Cork Bay, well, in Muizenberg at the time. And I was busy working in a winery in Devon Valley, and there was a block of Shiraz that was going to be pulled out. And Greg, my business partner, said, well, look, let's do a little foot stomp. It'd be a great party. Bring a ton of grapes in the pickup or the bucky, and let's just stomp. And I was saying, yes, absolutely. That's what I want to do. Yes. Yeah. So what we did, and brought the ton of grapes. We had 40 of our dear friends around, and we stomped through the night, had the most awesome party. There was no equipment, Carrie. We didn't have any equipment. It was just our feet, our fun and our sport that created this marvelous little journey of 3 barrels of Shiraz in our garage in Muizenberg, which we then bottled at the end of the year. Literally bought some pipes from the local hardware store, some plastic tubing, and some bottles that I put on the back of my bucky, and just siphoned it out of the barrel into the bottle. Well, of course, you can imagine we had more wine down our throats than we had in the bottle, but we had a hell of a lot of fun. Yeah. And we dished out that wine to all of the 40 that were involved. And I thought, well, okay, that's it. That was a lovely party. Well, lo and behold, Greg, my today partner, and Pete, who's unfortunately passed on, and he's the father of my son.
Darling Pete, yes. Yeah, this program can also be for Darling Pete, so that he's looking down and saying, my girl was cleverer than I thought. Yeah,
for sure. They both approached me and said, look, let's just make this a formal little business. Would you like to be the winemaker? And still being very green and very rookie and very so excited. I jumped on board and I said, without a doubt, I definitely want to do this. And I can promise you, Carrie, had I known what was ahead of me, I probably would have thought 500 times, do I want to do this? But I think at every turn, I probably would have said yes, because I don't think there's any other, as difficult as this industry is and as hard and tough as it is, there's no other profession that really suits me, I think, because I'm still an artist.
And you've
I can still
excelled it.
yeah, and I can still get on with it. Yeah, and it's great.
An avenue for all your creativity.
Exactly.
Your labels, and you've got your beautiful boy who I think is working with you. We'll talk about that in a minute.
So
but
awesome. Yeah.
Kath and I have got another thing in common, is that we each have a single beautiful boy that belongs to us.
Yes.
Kath, so you did Barefoot. You went and worked in the Rusty, what was Rusty Siller with an A? I've got
Amani.
COVID.
Amani.
I've
Yes.
got COVID disease. Long
Oh,
COVID for me equals that I can't remember
Yeah.
me, who's had a memory like a razor blade my whole life. Now I remember the first letter of every word that I'm trying to say. It's bizarre.
Well, that's a good start. That's very good.
Hopefully the others follow. So you
Yeah.
went and worked at Amani. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, after I finished setting up Kent Forrester and Martin Minot for 2 years, because Martin was at Vergelegen, and then I went and kind of helped get that project up and running. And then Martin went back to run that full time and left Vergelegen. So I needed to find another address. So down the road was a winery that had just been built by the Makepieces, and they live in England now, so they're out of the business. And I was here for 2 years, and then decided that I needed to kind of further my education. I needed to travel. And so I went off back to Oregon and to France, and they were very gracious in sending me to Australia to look at vineyards. So that was a great learning time for me. And in the same time, I was setting my little business up, the Barefoot Wines. And you mentioned that we got into trouble. Yes, we did, because Barefoot is actually a label that belonged to the now Gallo company, which is one of the biggest producers.
I was saying, you took on one of the biggest guys in the world. I remember laughing so much about it.
We were like David and one trying to slaughter Goliath, basically.
Yeah.
And we won a little edge to that, is that because we'd been doing business in the country for 10 years when they approached us, we were able to keep our URL. So our company is still called Barefoot Wine Company, Pty Ltd, but we trade as Catherine Marshall now, because we couldn't export our wines to the UK and to, all the countries that we were at the time, because of this infringement. So it all ended up fine. Initially it was a little bit tense, but we backed off, and and I'm very glad about that, because honestly, I didn't really want to be the same kind of label as the wines that they were producing. We were more in the high-end premium. So I said to Greg, we need to get ourselves away from that completely. And so we created a brand, Catherine Marshall brand, with Hanneke de Klerk labels. And we created something, I think, that is very personal, that is very, it's us, really, it's me. And I think that's really what we needed to define. So that's kind of the direction we took. Yeah.
You. So enough of the past, because that's enough. We're here and now and in the present. And we are in the grips of this magnificent portfolio of wines that you've put together. Kath came to see me, when last? It was last year, just before this ghastly COVID story started.
That's right.
We sat and we tasted through all of your wines, and including your boys' wines. And I have to tell everybody that if you have not tasted a Catherine Marshall wine yet, it's 1,000 lashes to the Watson with a shoelace, because you really, really do need to taste Catherine Marshall wines. They are gorgeous. You sourcing most of your fruit from Elgin.
Correct, yes.
Making your wine where?
Funny you mentioned Amani. It's really weird how the world rotates, because 20 years, when I left Amani, 20 years on, I'd never been back. I never put my foot back on this farm. And then I have been all over the place. I worked in Stellenbosch, I worked in Elgin, and I lived in Elgin. And then, unfortunately for me, being in Elgin, the farm that I was working on and making my wine out of was sold. So I needed to move out. So it was really weird how things work out. I managed to find a cellar within a month of harvesting in Stellenbosch, and I stayed there temporarily.
Sweaty moment.
I know, it's like real gypsy stuff. And it's very difficult and very hard to actually move all your stuff, because it's a lot of stuff that I had to move around, you know, all my barrels, all my pots, all of that. And so anyway, that little cellar was too small for what I needed. And it was, again, very fortuitous that I managed to find Amani, because the owners were Italian. They bought the farm from the previous owners who were American, who went back to America. And they weren't interested in making wine. All they wanted was a rental and somebody to look after the place. So Greg and I jumped in on it. And we said, yes, where do we sign? And again, it was within a month of harvest. So my stress levels were like beyond. Like,
and your timing as ever immaculate.
Always, yeah. And the cellar needed a lot of fixing and a lot of work, but we managed to get through the first year. And then this has been my third vintage here now. And we've cleaned it up, we've set it up, and we've made it ours. And now the tasting room is the next level, where we're opening in the cellar door. We're making it beautiful. We're going to have a deli here. We're going to make amazing wines. And I'm bringing on new wines as well. And my son Jono's here. So it's all very exciting stuff. I'm very happy.
Well, I'm going to bring my Jono, and we're going to come and do that with you. Shall we do that in our retirement? Kath, onto your wines.
Yes, no.
Finite Elements has to be the quintessential, most delicious, most beautiful, tinkly, pure, clean, bright Pinot Noir that I've ever tasted in my life. Finite Elements, I mean, the name says it all. Where does the name come from?
Well, you know, I have a portfolio of Pinots. Let me start there.
Besides, tell us about them from soup to nuts.
Making one for Woolies, that's quite a cool brand to be involved with. And Alan Mullins was very much my dearest friend, who's passed on, and he kind of worked with me on getting that project up and running. And then I have in the Catherine Marshall portfolio 2 wines called the Sandstone Pinot and the Clay Soil Pinot. And, you know, that was from my journey coming back from Burgundy, where everything is about soil and everything is about defining the domains and the wines from where they come. So when I got back to South Africa, I realized we have a beautiful story to tell. We have ancient soils, Carrie. They are ancient. They are not earthquaked. They are not, there's been no volcanoes. No. And so all our soils here are decomposed and are weathered. So we have an opportunity to tell an amazing story, as do the Burgundians, you know. So what better place than Elgin, where we have just precisely that. We have Table Mountain sandstone, and we've got Bokkerveld shale. And we've got combinations of all of that in between. So because I buy from about 4 different producers in Elgin, and they've got all different types of soils, I decided, fantastic, this is an opportunity for me to tell the story of my Pinot grown on sandstone and my Pinot grown on Bokkerveld shale. But then there was an amazing journey that I took with my son Jono in 2012. When Pete passed in 2011, there was always been this hunger and this itch for me to head off to Tibet. I really wanted to go and see Lhasa. I wanted to see the palace where the Dalai Lamas lived. And I've always been fascinated by this whole country. Right back from when I was a young girl reading Tintin in Tibet. You know, I'm a great Tintin.
So you're actually a Buddhist hippie pixie.
I think I've moved on from the hippie thing. I think I'm more, I've got my shoes on now. I don't wear blonde
shoes.
Shoes, but I do wear shoes now.
You went to Tibet.
So we went to Tibet, and because we have such a passion for mountains, because Pete was a great mountaineer. We used to go to the Drakensberg a lot. So I figured that would be a great reason for us to travel, was to go and pay homage to somebody who is so great in our lives in front of probably one of the greatest mountains on earth, right?
Yes.
And so we went to Tibet, and we spent amazing time with the lamas and the monks and traveling all around. And then the highlight of the journey, obviously, was to head up to base camp Everest and spend time with the nomads in their yak tents right at the base there, which was incredible, Carrie. It was a thing I'll never forget. And
But they
so,
speak to you. Do they speak English?
yeah, well, we had translators with us because you aren't allowed to travel there on your own. You have to have a driver and a translator. So we
Can
had
they
two
speak?
wonderful
Can they
young guys.
speak? Can they speak Pinot Noir?
Well, we introduced, I mean, they're not
Yes.
really au fait with alcohol. We didn't have much alcohol. The wine in Tibet is disgusting. So I kept my one bottle of Pinot in my rucksack for the occasion. So
Yes.
we headed up and we stayed with the monks for about 3 days. And then because it was all monsoon and the mountains were covered, I honestly didn't think we were going to see the great goddess, Chomolunga. But on the third day, I said to Jono, let's just pretend. Let's just take the metal, the enamel cups. Let's hike up to base camp. Let's sit there and look at the clouds and pretend we're seeing it, right? And as true as God, Carrie, as we were walking up, it was 11 o'clock in the morning, I'll never forget, this incredible geology on either side of us with lakes in front. It was exquisite. And the clouds just parted like that. And there she was in all her glory.
Wow.
I mean, the
Wow.
tears just streamed down our faces. We couldn't believe it, the beauty of this thing.
I've got
And
big goose flesh.
we ended up sitting, looking up at this last 3,000, because we were 5,200 above sea. It's very high. And luckily we
Almost
didn't
like
have.
Johannesburg.
No, it's very, very high. I mean, it's 5 times higher than Joburg. And it was amazing because there was a woman from Berlin sitting next to me, and she had not been out of the country since the wall came down. So we both sat there in absolute silence and drinking our Pinot, because I shared a cup with her. And we were
What
just
an
reflecting.
amazing place to drink your Pinot, though.
No, well, that's where it all
Place of-
happened. That's where it all happened for me. Then I realized, oh my God, I understand why Pinot now. I get myself, I get me, and I get why Pinot. It's because it's such a spiritual, it's a wine that really moves one, I think. I mean, if I watch people drink Pinot,
Definitely.
you can't help notice that. And so when I came home, I realized Pinot is for me a bit like climbing Everest. And I don't have to get to the top. I don't physically have to do that. I can do that through doing it through my Pinot, and so
Well,
that's
pretend. I mean, you were about to pretend that you got there, and you got there. So we can
I got to
pretend.
base camp 1. So my Pinot, making Pinot for me is like pushing to the next base camp,
Well, it feels like it's the pinnacle.
Yeah.
When you drink your finite elements, it is the pinnacle. It is just
Well,
gorgeous.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I appreciate that you get it.
No, I get you 100%.
But for me, it's about, okay, how do we get to the next level now? So every year it's that, because the finite elements is really about all of the conditions, the climate, the soils, what happened when you picked on that day, which bird pooped on the leaf on that day, how it all integrates with, how I interpret that.
Yeah.
And so those finite elements are the elements that I have to work with that wine. So I think that's a pretty cool way
It's
to.
a very cool way. We
Yeah.
then went on and you made Peter's Vision, which is a Cab Franc, which you gave me to taste last year as well, which is Cabernet Franc is one of my favorite grape varieties.
Yes.
And once again, leave it to Kathy Marshall, and you've finessed it into something that is so come doozer, baby. That's what my father, who was half Zulu, used to say, come doozer, baby, if you like something. And your Cabernet Franc is just so sumptuous, so gorgeous, so very full. I've never been one of those people to say, oh, it's little hints of pencil shavings. It's just a full, packed, gorgeous, velvety, fruit-filled bottle. It's just delicious. You want to have one, and then you want to have another one and another one. Your Cab Franc grapes are coming from where?
All right, so that's also another journey, Carrie. That is all a nod towards the great producers of Cab Franc, Merlot, from Chateau Angelus in Saint-Emilion, and I was so fortunate to have spent a harvest with the great Hubert de Board and Michel Roland at the time. I got to meet him and work with him a little bit.
We
and
love that naughty boy, don't we?
They were revolutionizing the whole Bordeaux area, like big time. So it was really cool. It was 1994, so it was really cool to have been able to be part of that journey. So when I came back to South Africa, I realized that we are way too hot here. We are, it's just, you can't work with these grapes. Too hot, wrong climate, all of that. Until I got to Elgin, and I saw that because we've got the ability to extend the hang time, we've got enough water, because Merlot and Cab Franc don't like stress at all, especially heat stress. And that's why you end up with wines that are both porty and green, because
Green, it's
there's
dreadful.
been,
I always say the only Merlot I really drink is Chateau Petrus.
well, that's it, because they know how to get it together.
It's a bit of an expensive order, but yeah.
Exactly. If you're going to drink, you're going to drink well. So I learned a lot from them, Carrie. And the one thing there is about canopy management and canopy architecture. So everything has to be ripening even. So we literally have to chop half the crop off the Cab Franc and Merlot to balance it out. You don't have all that port and green, that uneven ripening, which we have. Yeah. And so the Elgin, the Merlot is from Elgin, and the Cab Franc 2017 is from Elgin.
And they're all available, hey, Kath. We can order online. You've got a
absolutely.
Shop online.
I've got a beautiful shop online, and so yeah, you can.
Little boy.
Yeah, that's Greg just walked in. Yeah, I'm trying to keep him quiet.
So we can shop online at Catherine. Yes. What's it? Catherine Marshall.
Catherine Marshall. So you go cmwines.co.za.
Kath, before we go, because I'm running out of time here, talk to us about Jono's wines.
Okay, so Jono, he's a surfer dude. Let me put that up. That's his passion. He loves surf. He loves the sea. That's his religion. So the wine Jono's Wave is made for him because of his surfing, and it's really, the wine really reminds me of a bit of a surf break. When you drink it, it kind of is so fresh and so bright. You kind of think you got your head in a wave there. And so I thought it was a perfectly good name, Jono's Wave. So that's kind of where it's Chenin Blanc, 100% Chenin Blanc. Yeah. So
also from Elgin.
Also from Elgin, and also a little bit from Stellenbosch Old Bush Wine. So it gives you that lovely peach juice, juiciness.
It's gorgeous.
And then you've got the flintiness from the Elgin fruit. So a combination. I call it peach juice on a wet pebble. That's my tasting note for that wine. Yeah. So,
Kath, we need you to come up to Johannesburg and visit us.
I will be there soon.
I want my whole biz news community to just enjoy the wonders of Catherine Marshall's personality and your passion and your love. I hate that word passion, because passion is something that you should really use between the sheets. But it is, you know what I mean? I hate people say it's my passion.
I do. Yeah.
But you are very passionate about what you do, and it comes through in every single bottle that you put a cork into. We love you. We're privileged. We're just so proud to have you as a South African. And I cannot wait to see what your shop is going to be all about. I'm going to come down and visit you and do that shop. But before I do that, you are going to come up to Johannesburg, because we've got a little a project underway with Biz News at the moment that you are also going to be a part of going forward. So we're going to tell everybody about that in due course. But for here and now, thank you so much. You are a wondrous, wondrous personality to have in our midst. Thank you, Kath.
And right back at you.